Hello and welcome to Tim Talks. We are on what, episode 10 now? 9. I'm so excited for 10 though.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So today we're talking about email compliance, especially big laws that can really make or break your marketing program.
Absolutely.
And its budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've got things like the GDPR, you've got CASL, you've got CCPA. So you've got all these different types of laws that are being rolled out across not only the EU, but here within the US and with Canada. So it's really important that email marketers pay attention to these laws on how they're collecting data and different things like that.
So even though now GDPR is international, it's not a US-based law?
No, so it's only applicable to the EU.
Right.
So the general data protection.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, general data protection laws that is enforced for anyone that does business for service and goods that is marketed to people that live and reside within the EU.
Oh, okay.
So it's not universal. However, other countries and other now states here in the US have started to enact their own versions of the GDPR. So the EU was the first one to kick this off back in 2018. And then shortly thereafter, CCPA, which is the California Protection Act, came available in, I think, June of 2018. So they were very shortly after enacted their own version of it.
Interesting.
And then what's now we've seen is there's been other states that have decided to enact their own versions of this consumer protection laws to help protect consumers on how that data is transmitted, how you aggregate that data, how you process the data, what you do with it after, and just ultimately protecting consumer rights. That's the whole purpose of these laws. We've got Tennessee, we've got Jersey, Montana, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Tennessee, Florida, and Texas. All these states are rolling out these laws that are similar to the GDPR and the CCPA starting in as soon as next month and then all the way through January of 2026. So it's super important that email marketers are paying attention because you have to start abiding by the laws that each state's going to set up here within the U.S.
So with all these laws, let's start with GDPR because that's probably the widest known. What are the implications for marketers? So you're talking consumer data protection.
Right.
To what extent what does that mean exactly?
So really what we're looking at is on when a company is actually capturing that data, they need to make sure that they're informing the end user how they're going to use the data, what it's going to be used for, and then provide them their rights on, hey, if you want to delete this data, you want to know how we're leveraging this data, who we're sharing it with, anything like that, you have to provide the ability for that consumer to come to your website and ask how you're leveraging their data. You have to keep records of how it's being used. And if they ask you to delete the data, you have to delete any and all copies of that data.
So how do marketers go about keeping track of all this? So you have consent you have to track.
Right.
You have to track whether a consumer changes their mind and whether they give you that consent. Mm-hmm. And then you have to give them an easy opt-out.
Right.
So how would a marketer go about doing this?
So there's a lot of, well, we've seen a lot of different types of CRMs. They've built this in for their email marketing platforms where you can now go in and change your preferences. You can also, a lot of companies now, what they'll do is they want to actually change their laws or their rules on their website so that a consumer can easily come to the website and say, hey, I want to change my preferences. You can either do it directly in an email, you can do it on the website. So that way you're providing easy access for your clients and your consumers to change it, even if it's day to day, but you need to have a good management system to ensure that you're tracking that so that if they ask for you to delete it or want to make any changes, you're doing that properly. And it all needs to be recorded within your CRM.
And it sounds like something that you definitely want automated depending on your volume. So if you're a mom and pop shop dealing with 1 or 2 a month, not a big deal. But if you're someone like Walmart where you're dealing with thousands of those requests potentially, you really got to be on your toes with automation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with GDPR, it sounds very robust. Mm-hmm. How does that compare to the Canadian version?
So I'll get to that real quick, but I want to highlight though, just for marketers, like, because GDPR has been around long enough, so we all know for the most part that you need to comply with that. what a lot of people don't know is that if you're not complying with it, is the penalties are super heavy for not complying with GDPR. So it doesn't matter if you're a business outside of the EU, if you try to push your goods and services through email, through ad serving, whatever it is, into anyone that is in the EU, and you're not properly maintaining the data, you can face fines up to $20 million or 4% of your annual revenue, whichever is higher.
Holy cow.
Whichever one's higher.
So it's not just the marketing budget you're blowing, it's the entire bottom line of the company.
Exactly. So it's super important that companies remember to adhere to these guidelines, and because these are laws and rules that are strictly enforced by the EU with GDPR, and then also with the CCPA and with CASL. The fines vary from state to state, country to country, but GDPR is definitely the highest when it comes to how they are penalizing companies that don't follow their rules. So it's super important. But so to get to your next point or your next question of asking about CASL, how that is effective is just really maintaining anyone that has a Canadian address. Same thing, make sure you're keeping records, keeping an eye on what their opt-in and opt-outs are, maintaining good data governance. The fines aren't nearly as crazy. So it's not the same as it is with GDPR, but I just wanted to highlight, not to scare anyone, but it is a big number.
So, and you have marketers who go out and buy email lists without people's consent or do cold outreach.
Right.
And that just sounds like a huge legal trap.
Huge legal trap, because what the part of the whole process that the CCPA, CASL, and GDPR, what they're cracking down on is that very thing of companies and organizations going out and buying these lists and not getting the consent from the consumer to opt in to receive emails from them or to leverage their data in any capacity. So if you can't accurately track that you received this consumer either coming to your site or filling out a form or doing something and opting in to get information from you,
you're gonna have problems.
You're gonna have problems. What's really crazy though, and what we've seen is with GDPR, and it's also affecting CASL and CCPA, and then all the other states here in the U.S. that are going to start leveraging this, is cookies and how that is being handled. So how you track, I'm sure a lot of you have seen when you've been on a website, you're actually having to manage your preferences on how cookies are handled and things like that, which is why email is going to be so much more valuable. So talking about the positive on how email marketing is going to be impacted, you actually want to get that email address, and then that way you can do your cross-channel marketing and different things like that, because cookies at some point, as we've already seen, they're being more strictly monitored. They're making sure that you can't do a lot of tracking when it goes from website to website. And, we're also seeing that with Google, how they've been announcing that they're just going to do away with a lot of the cookies, and we're going to have to rely on email.
It's an insane amount to keep track of. And so as we're going through this alphabet soup of
that's basically what it is. Yeah.
Of compliance laws, you have the European Union that is like insane. Then you have Canada, which is kind of in the middle of the road. And for me, I feel like CCPA is probably going to be the most lenient. Is that something that tracks?
I wouldn't say that CCPA is most lenient because a lot, like you had Prop 24 from California that came out, and they revised a lot of the things. They had what was called CCPR, where they kind of doubled down on what they wanted to enforce. So I wouldn't say that it's the least stringent. It's probably a little more stringent than in some areas than even what GDPR is. The fines aren't there. That's the big difference, but they still can penalize you. So when you're looking at making sure that you do things like erasure of data, when you're wanting to provide a right to access for your consumers, all of that needs to be governed and maintained properly. But yeah, I wouldn't stack rank them in terms of like, oh, this is the worst. And they're all pretty strict on, you need to follow the rules. Otherwise you'll get in trouble from, you'll get your domain, it'll start to tank. your sender reputation, then just you as a brand will end up taking a hit.
So it sounds like to future-proof your marketing program, transparency is literally everything.
Yep.
Tell your consumer what they're doing from point A to point B with their data.
Yep.
Make it easy to access for that person, maintain privacy concerns. And perhaps probably the biggest takeaway is, just do not buy email lists.
Don't buy email lists. Don't do it. Just, it's not a good practice.
I don't know. It's only 20 million pounds.
Oh, yeah. It's chump change.
Yeah.
Would you like for me to write a check? Sure. I got
Yeah, we got that in my back pocket.
Yeah, right.
Well, this has been a really fun episode of Tim Talks. We want to remind everybody to like, share, subscribe, comment below, and go to Webbula.com for all of your email hygiene needs and, avoid these kind of legal traps.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you stay compliant and up to date. We'll provide some links down in the information notes of the episode. Description. That's what I was looking for. Absolutely. We'll provide a description for you so you can have some more information and links that you can look and check out some of this stuff for yourself.
Peace.
See you guys.